Hey everyone, welcome to Testing Business Ideas with AI. I am your host, David J. Bland. I am the co-author of Testing Business Ideas and the founder of Precoil, and I'm going to be walking you through my latest findings on testing business ideas with AI. Try to share some of my tips and tricks and what I'm seeing inside companies, and let's get started. So, my format, I'm going to just hang out and kind of draw with you today and share what I've seen going on inside companies. And then this will be recorded. So if there's anything you're missing or anything you really want to go check out after this webinar, you can check it out on the YouTube channel. It is right here, David J. Bland Precoil on YouTube. And we also upload the podcast episodes there too, which have been very popular over the years. So we're now in our third season of how I tested that. So you'll also see those and any other videos I upload there as well. For those of you who aren't aware of me, I will introduce myself a little bit here. So I am David J. Bland. I really focus on helping leaders basically de-risk their ideas through their portfolios. So I'm going through and I'm looking at, how do we break down risk? How do we share it? How do we test it? So I've been doing this at Precoil when I founded that in 2015. Before that, I was doing this at Neo as a principal advisor in San Francisco, and which was more like lean startup as a service agency. I was also doing this at Big Visible before that, which was a transformation agency and doing lean startup and innovation and transformation. So I've been doing this, I would say, full time for about 15 years now. And this has been my sole focus inside companies. And I'm not very dogmatic in how I approach it. I kind of look at design thinking and agile and lean startup, and I just kind of mash these things together as needed for my clients. I've been incorporating a lot of AI over the last few years. So I want to share how I'm thinking about that, how my clients are adopting that as well, and kind of walk you through things. But at the principal level of what I do, it's really trying to help people de-risk their ideas, make better decisions, and navigate kind of uncertainty with confidence. So here are some of the companies I work with. You'll notice it's not necessarily industry specific. What is specific across all of these companies that I work with, and these are a few, but I also work with more than this, it's really about de-risking, improving decision velocity, getting to decisions on whether or not we should launch something or not faster, and really trying to save money. So I save money by helping teams cut things they shouldn't be working on. I save money by helping them pivot into new markets and create money that way, and then generate revenue by just persevering and really taking that evidence-based approach across all the portfolio. So what I've learned over the last few years is AI doesn't accelerate progress by generating more ideas. And I bring this up because I think this is one of the most popular implementations I see of AI across my clients right now, is we want to do more ideation, we want to do better ideation, we want better ideas, better quality of ideas, bigger quantity of ideas. And to do that, we want to adopt AI. So if you think of your funnel, overall just how you approach things, and this is just a simplified view. There's ideation of, hey, what kind of ideas are we going to have? We're going to select some of those ideas. We're going to invest in a few of those, and then we're going to launch them. And what I see from AI is the majority of the adoption up here is the top of the funnel with ideate. And there's some fun things you can do here, like you can cross-pollinate, you can scrape patents, you can scrape other competitor sites, you can do all this stuff and like mash it all together and combine it with your company profile and your thesis and what you're trying to do with your company. And what happens, you get all these different ideas kind of pouring in to the top of this funnel. Now, the challenge I find with my companies I've interviewed, companies I've worked with, companies I've just been around over the last few years, is that this part is still done by people. The selection, it's still done by people. And they're like, what are we going to do? They're really kind of overwhelmed. Because you have all this influx of all this stuff where AI is speeding up the ideation, but we're feeling this when it comes to getting something to actual launch. How do we test it and validate it, reduce uncertainty in it, and actually move it forward? And so everything, I'm not going to say it's more of a funnel. It feels like more of a bowl where everything is just stopped here. Everything's clogged up. Yeah, we've made this part of the process faster and better and amazing, but it doesn't matter if we can't get down to here, if we can't see, some kind of ROI in what we're doing. And so I'm seeing this constraint move. I've worked with companies before where they felt like, I don't have a lot of ideas. I need to work on the ideation part. This is the challenge in our company. We don't have enough ideas. We don't have good enough ideas. I'm not hearing that so much anymore. I see this AI adoption wave coming through where we're spinning ideas off of AI. We're pulling on these ideas. We have hundreds, sometimes thousands of ideas now. And the constraint has moved. The constraint has moved to how do we select, how do we decide what to invest, how do we launch? And it's not a good time. If you're in this situation, you're probably overwhelmed. You're probably just feeling a bit like, wow, we've increased this count of ideas in our company, and now we don't know what to do with them. So where I try to approach this is, look, we need a system where we can work with AI to reduce the uncertainty in these ideas. So I'm not against using AI for ideation. I think that's a great way to use AI. However, we need to think about the whole process, the whole system. I don't know how many of you geek out over sort of like old lean books or management books, but I hearken back to Eli Goldratt and The Goal and how influential that was on my thinking and theory of constraints. And how, the constraint is the issue. Like, you can still pour more ideas at the top, but if you can't select, that's where your challenge is going to be. That's what you should address. So I will offer a limited diagnostic session at the end of this if you want to hang around, and I will offer that for folks who are feeling this, and I can kind of go through this in a little more detail with you on a one-to-one call instead of just a webinar. So I use this system called Extract, Map, Test. So I call it EMT system. It's almost like EMT is like triaging risk inside your business. It's basically like this simple 3-step repeatable way. It's my evolution from my work back with testing business ideas to today and how I've expanded that and simplified it. And I think that's really key. It's not just about extracting risk from canvases. Okay, I love canvases. Canvases are great, but not everybody uses a canvas, and risk it exists in different parts of your company. It exists in your roadmaps, in your executive slide decks. It exists in different things. So the idea of extracting that risk, prioritizing it, mapping it, and testing it is really important. So I kind of have this 3-step system, and I'm not going to go really deep into the system today in the webinar. If you have questions about it, you could always contact me. But I want to go into how I'm using AI and what I'm seeing the impacts of using AI across this system. So one way you can use AI is, okay, for extract, how do I start to extract assumptions from an idea or from a roadmap or from an executive slide deck or a backlog or an opportunity solution tree or a user story map or whatever that thing is? What I'm noticing is we're almost like combining all these variables together, and we're combining and kind of compounding risk into this sequence, into this sort of decisions have already been made because I'm looking at a thing and it looks like it's finished. It's based on facts, and when often it's not. So one of the things you can do is you can use AI to kind of extract risk and help you see your blind spots. Now, you have to be careful. Here are some of the prompts I use, and I have different customizations of these prompts based on what I'm extracting risk from. But you have to kind of set the context, and then you have to define what we mean by desirable, viable, and feasible. So this is kind of like this 3 circles I always use from design thinking, and I've been using this for over 10 years. But this framing has kind of permeated a lot of my clients. It's in their kind of portfolio reviews. It's in their innovation process. It's in their stage gates now. It's like a really, really smart way to think through risk and how you view risk and how you frame and categorize risk. But if you're going to do this using AI, you have to basically frame it up. You have to frame it up in a special way, or it'll just kind of make things up. So I like having to define it. And then you define your output format. So I like using about 5 to 8 assumptions per category. I like it trying to explain some rationale. And this is great. So what happens is you have something in your org, like a roadmap or a canvas or a backlog, and you're trying to find out what are the assumptions in this. AI can be very helpful here when we're looking at the selection process, not just the idea, but the selection of the idea. And what you end up with is you end up with kind of this grouping of assumptions that are extracted by AI. I love that. However, I also do this still manually with my teams. This is one of the classes I was teaching at the Yale MBA program. And this idea of we want to team together and we want to be able to come together and do this manually. We want someone that represents desirability. So probably someone for design or user research or sales or marketing. We want someone that basically represents viability, which is a lot of product and accounting. We want somebody that represents feasibility, which is technical and legal, but also it could be governance, compliance, other folks. Like this idea of a cross-functional team going through this. And what happens is we end up with assumptions that are extracted by the team. Now, what I think is really interesting here is, from my experience, and I don't know if this is your experience, but this is what I'm seeing. There's a lot of overlap in between what I see from assumptions that are extracted by AI and assumptions that are extracted by the team. If we do this manually and then we also do it with prompts, there's a lot of overlap. However, I find that there's value in the edges. So when we think about this and we look at, okay, what are the things we missed when we extracted assumptions as a team? What are the assumptions we didn't think of? Also, what are the assumptions that we missed when we extracted only using AI? There are things that we extracted that the team may have considered, but AI did not. So what I'm seeing is this really interesting blend. It's a blend of AI and people working together. It's not necessarily AI replacing people, but it's using it with people to find out what are the assumptions, what are the things that have to be true for this to work. Now, one of the ways I've framed this, and I picked this up from MIT research a while back, is what I call human in the loop. And so this idea of you're going back and forth, and it's not necessarily I press a button and it does everything for me, okay? It's a human in the loop, a human in the process, whether you're doing something simple like this or you have like a distributed like agent system and you have all these different agents interacting with each other. Like we have an experiment agent and a hypothesis agent and an evidence agent, and they're all interacting, and there's still people involved though. There's still people involved because decisions are social in nature and there needs to be some kind of accountability. And I don't see a lot of people deferring their decisions to AI. So the next part of this, which I've learned over the last couple of years, has been very fascinating to see how AI impacts the mapping process. So first, we just talked about extracting. We talked about how we use AI prompts and people and together, and we have an overlap, but there's value on the edges. When you think about mapping, mapping is really a prioritization of that extracted risk. And so we look at that, and it's basically assumptions mapping. There's plenty of videos out there on assumptions mapping if you want to learn more. But we're looking really to get the things that are most important with the least amount of evidence. What I'm finding in this process with AI is that people really want to do this manually. They do not want to rely on prompts. I have tried many different versions of prompts, and I've ran workshops on prompts and different ways to prompt AI. And you can get it to an extent, to a point where it can prioritize on importance and evidence. However, it's missing a lot of context, and you have to give it so much context and upload so much about your situation, about what's feasible, about your business model, about your customers, that it isn't really effective yet, in my opinion. And I use the word yet because I do think it could get there, to prioritize your assumptions on your behalf. What I see my teams doing in practice is they're doing it manually. However, after they do it manually, they're checking. And I do this with stakeholders too. Like we'll have teams and we'll do our mapping, and then we'll have our stakeholders join the session. We'll say, look, these are the most important, least amount of evidence. What are we missing here? And sometimes the stakeholders have a broader view of risk, a broader view of the company, of strategy, and they can chime in and help out where the team just didn't have the information. Similar with AI in a way. You can create a prompt and say, okay, you're a senior experimentation strategist. I'm going to upload my map, and I want you to basically evaluate that and provide things that appear either misplaced or I'm overconfident. This is a bit better use of AI, in my opinion, the way I'm looking at it now, than trying to have it map all your risk for you. And again, when I think about decisions and how we make decisions, they're very social. And I mentioned this before. So decisions are social and they involve other humans and reputation and accountability. And so I'm not saying that we can't use AI in our decision making, but I don't think we use AI to make decisions for us. We want to defer our decisions or give that authority to AI to make decisions for us. So what I see in practice here is with the mapping and with how we're approaching that, basically what we're doing is we're doing it manually, and then we're asking it to stress test, to look at that and say, what's different? What do you think is wrong? What is misplaced? What am I overconfident in? And that will lead to some insights, but not necessarily using it to map everything for you and then go forward as if, okay, that mapping's correct. That I don't see in practice with my teams. So we covered the extract part. So the extract being, how do we extract risk, whether that's from a canvas or a roadmap or a backlog or opportunity solution tree or a user story map or whatever you're using. Right? We talk a little bit about the mapping process. So with mapping, it's more about how do we prioritize, how do we focus on the things that are most important with the least amount of evidence. And this is where a lot of our risk resides. It's up here. These are the riskiest leap of faith assumptions. If these are false, we're in big trouble. It's not something we can course correct on. It's something that we will really struggle with and will fail in a big way, not in a small way, if they're ignored. But then it's like, how do we test those? So we've extracted, we've mapped. How do we test? How do we use AI in testing? Well, I have some bad news for you. So I try to be pretty realistic in my webinars and in my advice. AI, it just gives generic answers. Mostly because I find that it's trained on what I would say is unproven business advice. It is not fine-tuned enough yet, anyway. And I keep using the word yet when I'm doing this presentation because things can change. But it's not fine-tuned enough yet to give you really good advice on how to test. I hear things and see things like, you should send surveys, just like, how likely are you to buy, and take that into account for your forecast. I see things like, just run focus groups and then act as if whatever they said is a positive reaction and that's a demand. I have things like, it drives me nuts. It's like, just build right away. And it's like, if you understood anything about how I approach business, it's not build right away and then figure it out later. You do need to think deeply about things. Yes, we move quickly, but a lot of the advice is just not quite there yet. I use the word yet because maybe we'll get there, but right now it doesn't seem like it's super helpful for my clients. And so what I see is AI is only good as the evidence it reasons over, right? Without a validated experiment data, your guidance becomes guesswork. And so this is a real big challenge I have right now with using AI for testing, which is near and dear to my heart. I mean, I've been focused on testing experimentation for the last 15 years of my life. I want to use AI for it, but I became so frustrated, I would say in the last 6 to 9 months, that I finally was just like, there has to be a better way. There has to be a better way to do this. There has to be a better way to give it like solution grade evidence, like give it decision grade evidence where it can reason over that and work with that in a better way. And so I want to share a little bit of that with you today on this webinar. And I want to show you kind of how it can power things and just give you a kind of overview of what this can look like and how you can think through deeper than how do I just prompt for a test and have it generate a test plan. How do I actually get stuff that I can use? So I'm going to show you a little bit of PrecoilGPT. It's a basic library that I've created that creates value, but I want to share how it works a little bit. And we're just going to do this in real time. So I'm just going to pull it up, and we will demo it, and I will show you how it works. So basically, this is a library powering this. This is just a really basic front end to this, but I want to show you kind of like what it looks like from a decision grade evidence point of view. So if I want to say something like, oh, help me test my business idea. Well, I mean, you can do that through prompts, right? I could say, I have I want to sell cat wearable devices to cat owners in San Francisco for, let's see, it will cost $299 for the device and a $15 a month subscription, right? Something kind of absurd, although I've been pitched on ideas kind of like this in the past, so it's not that absurd. So that's great, right? Because we have something to extract from. So you can use prompts to extract. Those prompts I shared with you earlier, you can just use those and you'll be able to extract assumptions from that idea using the LLM. But where I think the gap has been frustrating me has been in, how do I get tests that match my assumptions that actually help me go learn what I need to learn? Not a focus group, not a survey, not just like the basic stuff all the time. So here, I'm going to do something really, really basic. I'm going to say, okay, it returned 5 to 8 assumptions per theme. I tend to start with desirability and viability. So I'm going to basically say, cat owners see value in this, and they're going to pay for this thing, okay? So when I generate an experiment plan, it's not pulling from just the general model and then saying, here's some stuff you could do like focus groups. What it pulls from is a curated experiment library built in JSON that has, cost, evidence strength, runtime, setup time, risk theme. What can I do before this in a sequence? What can I do after this in a sequence? What can I pair with this in a sequence? Which I tried to write in the book, but a book's really challenging format to pull all that off, especially with the before, after, and pairing. And so how does this help me? How does this help my teams? And what I can do is say, okay, well, yes, you should start with interviews. That makes sense. You should do a discovery survey. Okay, next. You should do search trend analysis. Here's how to do that. And here's how to do your landing page test. But it's like sequentially building it out for you as a draft plan based on a proven experiment library. And I think that's where we get tripped up sometimes, is we don't have that reference material to pull from. And that becomes challenging because we get sort of like generic advice and we go through all this and we say, oh, look, it gave me some kind of experiment that doesn't even fit my situation. I'm not going to trust this at all. And what happens is your teams will lose trust with what you build. So I have a lot of my clients right now, they're building like their internal co-pilots, their internal GPTs. They're building these AI solutions because they've gone through my training, they've had my workshops, and they're trying to internalize this and build out capabilities across the company with coaches, et cetera. And that's all great. And I do think in this day and age, you need some sort of internal helper, like some sort of AI solution internally that can help you select and run a test that makes sense for where you're at with your idea in your company. However, I'm seeing it fail. I'm seeing it without the reference material, without a library, without something that can reference that is proven. And these can be like customized for your company. If it's not proven, you're going to destroy the trust with your teams with the solution you've built, and they're not going to use it. You're going to see a spike in usage. You're going to see, oh, we did a workshop and we shared our internal GPT and everyone started using it, and then nobody came back to it because it gave advice that didn't make sense. And I think this is the next challenge we have in our funnel. In our funnel, we have this challenge of we're trying to build internal tools with our with what we have, and everything's changing so quickly. And we want to basically give something that helps people, but unintentionally we're destroying trust by we're giving something that gives bad advice. So what I want you to think about here is the way I'm seeing AI being basically used inside my clients right now, and I work with a lot of large corporations, software, hardware, B2B, B2C, is that it doesn't reduce risk necessarily by like generating answers, right? We're using it to like surface assumptions, to help us focus decisions and design evidence, but we have to be very thoughtful, right? That idea of that human in the loop. Keep thinking about that human in the loop. We have what we're trying to do. We need to make the decisions, but we can use AI to help us extract assumptions that maybe we hadn't thought about. We can help it basically look at how we map assumptions and prioritize and what we maybe didn't consider or maybe what we got wrong. But we're doing the mapping. We own the decisions. We can help it design experiments, but only if it has the context and a library to pull from. It's not going to design great experiments if it's just pulling from the general model and pulling just from really generic business advice. You need a tailored solution that makes sense for you. And so I still think this EMT system is really, really powerful with AI and how we de-risk. I feel like that is really, really powerful, but we have to be careful of how we implement it. And it's a really fast disruptive wave happening across all the companies right now. And so what I'm seeing is this mix of, yes, I do something with my team, and yes, we use AI, but we're blending it together. It's back and forth. Yeah, I might have multiple agents, but they're talking to each other, and there's a human in the loop helping us make decisions and better decisions. So I don't feel like better decisions come from more confidence. I think we become overconfident in our gut, intuition, all of that. This is why I've been doing this last 15 years in risk mitigation and risk reduction, is because I worked at companies where people were really overconfident and they were just very persuasive, and we built things, and I spent nights and weekends building things that nobody wanted. This is why I'm so passionate about what I do. I think the decisions come from better evidence at the right time. And AI can definitely help us do that. It can help us generate better evidence at the right time, but it really matters on how we tailor it to our company and where we're at in the process. And I don't think idea generation is going to be the problem long-term here. I'm already seeing it happen. I'm already seeing teams get overwhelmed and companies get overwhelmed with all these ideas, and they do not have a process for selecting them, for validating them, for finding out if they should launch them, where they generate ROI. That's where the constraint's moving. That's where you're all going to be overwhelmed if you're not already. So I told you I was going to give you a limited time diagnostic, and this is the link. So if you just scan your phone on this QR code, you also have this video. If you're struggling with this and you're like, hey, I'm trying to use AI to de-risk things in my portfolio, I'm trying to make decisions faster, I'm trying to reduce risk faster, I think AI can help me, but I'm not really sure how, then book a session with me and we'll talk through it. And it'll just be a one-on-one session. I'm not going to sell you anything. I just want to help you try to figure it out. And I can share what I can from other clients that I work with and what I've seen across industry, much like I did today. So thank you all so much for hanging out with me. I appreciate you. I think you can figure this out. It is human in the loop. It is finding a curated library that works for you. And I wish you all the best. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for hanging out with me.